I was in line at the supermarket when I smelled the perfume. It wasn't exactly the same. 42 years make anything change, but it had that jasmine base that always made me think of her, even when I tried not to. I turned my head slowly, almost afraid to confirm what my heart already knew. Sarah was there, 3 people ahead of me, looking distractedly at her phone, a shopping basket on her arm. The hair that used to be dark brown now had silver strands that shone under the fluorescent light, but the way she tilted her head was exactly the same. My chest tightened in a way I hadn't felt since Martha died 2 years ago. I froze, holding my ridiculous basket with instant soup and sliced bread, the kind of groceries that scream, lonely 63-year-old man. I thought about leaving, about giving up on the shopping and going home, but something kept me in place. Maybe it was Martha's voice in my head, that gentle voice that always told me to stop living in the past, but also not to waste the chances life offers. Sarah paid for her groceries and turned to leave. Our eyes met. For an endless second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, that small, half-shy smile, and my heart did that stupid thing I thought I'd forgotten how to do. "James?" Her voice was quieter, but it still had that music. "Sarah." It was all I could say. She came over and we stood there in the middle of the Harris Teeter supermarket while people passed with their noisy carts and shopping lists. There was so much to say that the words simply vanished. "You're still here in Richmond," she said at last. "I never left. And you?" "I moved back 6 months ago. My sister got sick and I needed to be close." He looked at her bags, then back at me. "Do you have time for a coffee?" I glanced at my basket. The soup could wait. The loneliness of my house could wait. Everything could wait. We went to a small café 2 blocks away, a place that didn't exist when we were young. We sat by the window, and the golden light of the October afternoon made patterns on her face, emphasizing the lines life had drawn. She was more beautiful now, in a way the 20-year-old Sarah could never have been. "So," she began, stirring the coffee she hadn't tasted yet. 42 years. 42 years, 5 months, and 13 days. The words came out before I could censor them. She looked up, surprised, and I felt my face flush. "Sorry, I remember the day you left. 23rd of May, 1983, she said softly. "I remember too." We were quiet for a moment, listening to the cafe's background noise. The espresso machine, distant conversations, soft music on the radio. Then Sarah spoke, almost a whisper. "I thought of you at my wedding." She looked out the window. "Mark was a good man. I loved him truly. But when the priest asked if anyone objected, I looked at the door and, for a fraction of a second, imagined you walking in, saying you couldn't let me go. Something tightened in my throat. I didn't know you were getting married. My mother told me 3 months later. I drove to your old house and stood on the other side of the street like an idiot, knowing you weren't there." "Why didn't you look for me before?" There was no accusation in her voice, just genuine curiosity mixed with what seemed like old pain. Fear, I suppose, and then pride. I turned my cup in my hands. "When you chose Stanford instead of Virginia Tech, when you said you needed to find yourself away from here, away from me, I thought you'd made your choice. I thought it would be selfish of me to ask you to stay." I was 19, James. I was terrified. My mother had spent her whole life in Richmond, married at 20, had children at 22, and there was always that sadness in her, like she'd lost something she could never get back. Sarah wiped her eyes quickly. "I didn't want to be her. I didn't want to look at you in 20 years and resent myself for not having tried. And I didn't want to be the reason you didn't try." I reached across the table, almost touching her hand, but not quite. "I thought if you really loved me, you'd come back. And I thought if you really loved me, you'd come after me." The truth hung between us, simple and devastating. 2 young lovers, both so afraid of being the mistake for the other, that they made the mistake of separating. "Martha knew about you," I said after a while. Sarah looked at me in surprise. "Not everything, but enough. A few years before she died, we had one of those deep late-night talks. She asked if I had any real regrets in life. I told her about you." "What did she say?" She said we all carry an if, but we can't live in them. She said she loved me, completely and utterly, but that the human heart is big enough to hold more than one story. I smiled sadly. At the funeral, I looked at all the faces, our children, grandchildren, decades-old friends, and I thought how right she was. We had a beautiful life, but still, Sarah finished. Mark died 4 years ago. Heart attack on the golf course, fast and painless, the way he would have chosen. In his last months, when he wasn't well, we talked about a lot of things. One night he asked me, "Were you happy?" I answered honestly that I was. Then he took my hand and said, "But there was someone before, wasn't there? Someone you never quite forgot." "You told him?" I told him. About the boy who took me to see the sunset at James River Park, who memorized all my favorite poems, who cried with me when my father died. She finally drank the coffee. Mark didn't get angry. He just said he was sorry I'd carried it alone for so long. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows through the café. A song started on the radio, "The Way We Were," and we both laughed, a half-bitter laugh. "The universe has a cruel sense of humor," Sarah said, "or it's trying to tell us something." She looked at me for a long moment. "Do you believe in signs, in destiny?" I didn't used to. Martha was the believer, the one who went to church every Sunday, who prayed before meals. I only went with her to keep her company. I looked at my hands. After she died, I started going alone. I don't know why. Maybe looking for answers, maybe just looking for her. One day, Pastor Thompson gave a sermon about God's timing versus our timing, about how sometimes blessings arrive decades after we asked, in ways we never expected. And you think that's what this is? A belated blessing? I think I'm 63. My knees ache when it rains. I have more medications in the bathroom than food in the fridge. And yet, looking at you now, I feel like that stupid 21-year-old who thought love would fix everything. I finally let my hand touch hers. But now I know love doesn't fix everything. It's just the beginning. Sarah turned her hand over and intertwined her fingers with mine. Her skin was colder than mine and had those age spots we all gain, but it was the truest feeling in the world. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared we might be just two lonely people seeking comfort in a memory. Scared of ruining what we had by being who we are now. I'm scared too. Scared my children will think I'm betraying their mother's memory. Scared I don't know how to do this anymore. How to be with someone, how to make room in my life for another person." I squeezed her hand gently. "But you know what I'm most afraid of? Waking up in a year and realizing I let you go again." She sobbed, half laughing, half crying. "We don't even know if it can work. I live in a tiny house near my sister. You probably have your whole life structured. We have children, responsibilities. We're not those kids who could just run to the sunset. No, we're not. We're better." I stood and sat beside her on the cushioned bench, putting my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me, and it was as if 42 years simply disappeared. We're people who know loss, who understand the value of time, who won't waste a single moment on games or silly pride. "So what do we do?" she asked against my shoulder. "How about we start slowly? Friday dinners, Sunday walks in the park. Let our adult children freak out while we rediscover each other." I smiled. I even promised not to propose before the 3rd week. She laughed, that laugh I'd kept in memory all these years. 3rd week? What a gentleman. We stayed at the cafe until they closed, talking about everything. Our marriages, children, careers, disappointments, joys. I learned she'd become a librarian, had 3 children and 5 grandchildren, had lived in Seattle for 20 years before returning. She learned I'd worked as a civil engineer until retirement, had 2 children and a grandson, had learned to cook after Martha died but was still terrible at it. When we finally left, the night had cooled. Sarah shivered, and without thinking I took off my jacket and put it over her shoulders. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You used to do that night on the pier, remember? It was windy and you gave me your basketball team jacket. And you never returned it. I still have it. It's in a box in my sister's attic, along with the letters you wrote me and the program from that silly play we did senior year. We walked to her car in comfortable silence. Before she got in, I held her hand again. Sarah, I don't know what will happen. I don't know if we'll have 5 years together or 25. I don't know if this will work or if we'll find we're strangers now. But I know I don't want to spend another day wondering, what if? She put her hand on my face, and her eyes, those same eyes despite everything, looked at me with a tenderness that made my heart ache. Friday night, 7 o'clock, take me to that Italian restaurant that used to be on Grace Street, if it still exists. And if it doesn't, then we'll find a new place. Isn't that what it's about? Finding new places, creating new memories, while carrying everything we've learned with us? I watched her drive away, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't go back to an empty house. I went home to a house full of possibilities, second chances, everything I thought I'd lost on May 23, 1983. That night before sleeping, I did something I hadn't done since Martha died. I prayed. I didn't ask for anything specific, just gave thanks. Thanked the supermarket line, that jasmine perfume, 42 years that taught us to value what we'd lost. Thanked that it wasn't too late. At exactly 7, I rang the doorbell of a small, well-kept house. When the door opened, I forgot how to breathe. We drove through the streets of Richmond, nervously talking about trivial things. The Italian restaurant was gone. In its place stood a cell phone store. Sarah looked at me and smiled. New place, new memories. We found a small French bistro 2 streets over. We raised our wine glasses. And then we laughed. We laughed about everything. Our age, our fears, 42 wasted years. But we also spoke seriously about our children, about how to introduce them to this idea. When we left, the night was starry, a rare thing in Richmond. At her doorstep, we stood still, neither of us wanting the night to end. And then, after 42 years, 5 months, and